This is the original esport racing game. This is iRacing.
Good evening, race fans, and welcome to coverage of the Porsche Club of America Sim Racing Series, live tonight from the West Course at Circuit of the Americas in Austin, Texas. And James Pike, the voice of Podium Esports, here on the iRacing Esports Network with Taylor Burris, Michael Polisek, and our producer, as always, Cisco Skymuza, punching buttons in the virtual production trailer. And Taylor, we go from a very, very hilly course last week and a very tricky, technical, bumpy course in Lime Rock Park to a much smoother, wider, much more flowy circuit in Circuit of the Americas. Yeah, I think you'd be hard-pressed to find two road courses that were more dissimilar to each other on any calendar, much less the Porsche Club of America Sim Racing Series calendar. But this is a very, very different animal from London.
Followed by Michael Evans in the 12th position. Dewey King will start in 13th, followed by Chris Walsh in
Daniel Ricciardo's helmet this weekend for the United States Grand Prix, which will be run at this very circuit of the underway with racing at COTA. And John Cook will lead this field up the hill and up to turn one for the first time with Wagner in hot pursuit. And then Kikis there with you as they all fan out to turn one, and we'll see how they all squeeze and sneak through and make it looks like they're all going to get through. Stifel and Trey Drawhorn have gone off and spun, and they are now racing side by side with one, or not quite side by side, but next to each other on the scoring charts. Drawhorn currently running 21st, and Stifel running in the 20th position, and relatively close to one another as well. Only about maybe a second or so between those two cars.
And right in front of the Mac, he definitely is. And we see several drivers trying to take a little bit of a different approach on each of these corners, but surprisingly, some have been able to succeed while others have been struggling. I mean, we just saw earlier how difficult it was for some of these drivers to make it up through turn one and without any incidents, even seeing some drivers sliding, coming off corner exit and struggling with some grip. So I'm pretty sure drivers are just trying to find that right groove and the right place to put their car in order to get the best run off corner exit.
And incidentally, coming through turn one that last time was a bit tricky for Colin Thomas, who locked up the brakes right on the apex and gave up the lead in the rookie class to Jonathan Waltman as a result. So Waltman now running in the 10th spot. He's the leader of the rookies, and Thomas is at 11th. And Michael Evans is right there, too. Don't forget the 980. If he can get around Dewey King and get caught up here, he's not that far away.
Thomas followed by Dewey King in that number 32. Behind them is
Mike 17, all that much. Logan, you and James Heath still in that really entertaining battle for 6th and 7th. Those two have been pretty closely linked together all night, but we'll turn back to the 23 and the 32. Colin Thomas and Dewey King, these two have been pretty closely linked all evening long. Michael Evans also in there as well, if either one of these two slip up as they enter the stadium section.
As they enter the stadium section right now, Evans was able to get a good run through that that hairpin right there, entering the stadium section to close the gap between him, King, and Colin Thomas, who is still leading this pack of cars as they're working their way coming out of the stadium section. And we still see Colin Thomas doing a great job of holding his line, getting good runs off the corner exit, but Dewey King has been putting the pressure needed to keep that fight going strong.
Maybe King and Michael Evans that may go to war in just a moment, because it seems like Kang, especially through 8, isn't getting the greatest, or the turn 8 complex, shall we say, isn't getting the greatest of runs, but does a nice job through that stretch right onto the front straightaway, and will inch ever so closer to the number 23 machine. But turn 1, I have a feeling that might be the one that changes everything. Remember, that's where Thomas locked up the brakes and lost the spot to Waltman earlier on in this race. You know he's going to try and do that again, but he drove way, way wide and nearly came back across Dewey Kang's front bumper. And just like that, the 32 is now all over the rear bumper for the 23.
I'd imagine that was definitely a Code Brown moment for both drivers involved, because they were on a trajectory to hit each other, but good last-minute saves by both of them to keep the cars out of each other and keep racing. Colin Thomas, though, he must be kicking himself for locking up into turn 1, because he's just let Jonathan Waltman, who is now in P9, just walk away from him. And he's definitely going to have to do something now because there's only less than 20 minutes left in the race. Again, anything can happen in these final 20 minutes, but if he's going to have to do something, it's got to be now.
Getting close to it. Getting very, very close to it here as we remind you as we work our way towards the final 20 minutes of tonight's race. Actually, within the final 20 minutes already. The Porsche Club of America hosts over 3,500 events annually across North America. Between the 10 national events and thousands of regional events, there's a PCA event for every Porsche enthusiast. PCA hosts autocross events, concours d'elegance, drivers education classes, driving tours, social events, and tech sessions. For more information, visit pca.org/events. As Colin Thomas got tripped up by the lap traffic, the number 20 of Trip Starkey slowed him up, and that has given the opportunity for Dewey Kang to go to the outside and one at least, and then Kang is going to lock up the brakes just a bit, going right over the top of the crest of the apex, and all the time he gained in that little exchange, he just lost. So Thomas now with a bit of breathing room, and Michael Evans is the one closer to Kang to try and pounce.
That was some crazy incidents going on that front straightaway. We saw Trip Starkey get loose coming out of the hairpin, causing an incident for him to spin. Colin Thomas had to make avoidance maneuvers just to make no contact with him, and now they're back at it again as they come on the back straightaway here at COTA. Dewey Kang now is going to take a peek to the inside as they go into the hairpin, entering the stadium section, but couldn't get to the inside of him. But Michael Evans, though, was able to do some great moves and avoidance with those two drivers who were spinning out of control almost when they came up through turn one. So a great driving and great car control for the two drivers of Colin Thomas and Dewey Kang.
So we've learned tonight, Michael, that the turns that you really need to watch out for are turn one, the entry into the stadium section, and then turn one. And maybe turn one seems like it might be a little bit tricky.
You could say that again. Turn one is, it's a corner. It's a corner that you really only find here at COTA, and it's a very unique corner because they said before it's very wide. There's plenty of lines through it, and it's also exceptionally tight, and it's very, very hard to see the apex into the corner until you're practically on top of it. The A-pillar and also your limited field of view don't really help from either of those. So it's a matter of just mentally memorizing where the apex is. And also with the uphill leading into turn one, you can use the extra traction provided by gravity to slow down the car a lot more. You can put in a lot more brake input than you would as per usual. But again, you've got to be careful because eventually that uphill is going to end in a crest. And if you get things wrong, if you brake too late, then you're going to go over that crest way too fast. And if you're on the brakes at any point during that point, then you're going to spin or lock a wheel or worse.
It's that transition up to the top of the hill that makes it so tricky, and the fact that the apex is right on the crest and not sort of on an incline as you go up the hill. It's right on the top of that plateau, and that's what makes it so tricky because it changes the amount of load the car can handle under braking. You've got, as you talked about a lot tonight, Michael, as you go up the hill, all of that force helping you a little bit, making it a little bit easier to get loaded up or slowed up on the brakes, and then when you get right to the top, all that force that the track is putting on the car falls away as it levels out, and all of a sudden you thought you had enough brake in, and then you get to the top of the hill and you've got way too much brake in, and you have to counter and overcorrect, and that sends and has sent a lot of these drivers sideways through the apex of turn one.
He thought that he saw a hole appearing in that corner before the stadium section. Unfortunately, that hole wasn't there, and by the time that he was on the brakes, he was already kind of committed to diving on the inside of my day. Unfortunately, there was no hole there. So, unfortunately, Jonathan Choom will probably be getting a penalty for that, and that's definitely going to hurt his race. However, David Stewart, as you said before, Pike, he should be very, very happy that he's finally got some room to breathe, and maybe his heart rate can come down a tiny bit from all that exciting battling that happened just a couple laps before.
Interesting thing about this battle is that you've got some of the leaders working their way through this group right now. You've got Lee Peterson and Matthew Kikis, or Chris Pies and Matthew Kikis, all within this battle.
Colin Thomas and Dewey Kang are back at it, and Dewey Kang curb hopping up in turn one, misses the apex completely. Colin Thomas has to back off tremendously, but now we'll get to the outside as they make the run through the S's. Almost a little bit of contact right there once again as Kang had to back off to let Colin Thomas to get by as they're now approaching that cutoff section where they get to the back half of the course here at COTA. But Colin Thomas moves back up into the top 11.
It won't help his position on the scoring pylon, but I have to believe that our friend Ian Plash would have appreciated Dewey Kang's drift across the top of turn 1 there. Pretty good style on that. Nice angle on the 32 as he crested the apex, but he also lost the spot to Colin Thomas. So Thomas now up to 11, Kang back to 12, and Michael Evans, who's just sort of been sitting here waiting for one, if not both of these two to make a bigger mistake, still holding on to that 13th position.
And unfortunately, lap traffic for Colin Thomas causing huge issues as Earl Arts Jr., I think, unsafely rejoined onto the track right into Colin Thomas, as Thomas is going to drop off that train, and that's going to just leave Michael
Off
Evans.
the corner exit. Michael Evans struggling just a little bit. Can't quite seem to keep up with Dewey Kang, who's been running a little bit smoother now after that incident that he had with Colin Thomas early on, and is now running a very smooth race as they close in on the final 5 minutes.
Just about 5 minutes to go. How about right about now? 5 minutes exactly left on the clock, as these drivers will have maybe about 3 laps and change, 3 or 4 laps. As Colin Thomas is going to get a penalty here for an unsafe read there. That will come across the line to finish off tonight's event. We can also tell you that the winner of tonight's Hard Charger Award and the $50 prize that goes to that driver, courtesy of our friends at AL Racing Simulators, is...
As we're awaiting confirmation, I'd just like to talk about how hard it is to actually avoid instant points here, because as this is really a momentum-based track, even though that there's plenty of slow corners, there's a lot of places where you can go wide, just dip a wheel off the racing surface and get an off track for that, which is equal to 1 instant point. So whoever wins this award, my hat's off to them, because that's very, very hard to do on this track.
As we will take a look at the full field rundown now and tell you where your favorite driver finished, starting with your winner, the 997, John Koch, who came out on top of this field, brings the victory back to the Chicago region of the PCA over Gresham Wagner, who came home P2. Bruce Pies finishes 10th, and we can confirm that the Rannigan Award goes to Dewey Kang, who only picked up 8 incident points this evening. So Kang is your winner of the Rannigan Award for the cleanest race of the evening, and he finished in the 11th position.
The first car to finish 1 lap down in the 12th.
It is exactly what you think it is. It translates from German into Mr. Clean, and that is what Dewey Kang is this evening. Had the lowest incident point total of anyone here, but given that that number was 8, I think you can attest just how tricky this place is to get around doing, because it's not easy for people, even though it's big, and it's wide, and it's fast in a lot of spots. It's tricky in a lot of ways, and I don't think a lot of people realize that until you actually drive around this place a bit.
Absolutely. Am I on?
You are indeed. Go ahead and talk.
Yeah, it's an honor. Thank you, guys. It's my first time in the broadcast. This is absolutely amazing, and I'm truly honored to be Mr. Clean. It is a very tricky track, really. It's really easy to pick up a lot of incident points, and the corners are very tricky. You don't have too much grip. And I have no idea how I got this low, but for every race, I try to always keep it really clean. And I will say, I will do an honorable mention for my buddy Michael Evans, who could have nailed me so many times, but he didn't. He was a gentleman. So I will forward my Mr. Clean award to Michael Evans here.
Was about to ask too, because you had plenty of opportunities to bump that number up a little bit, just with how many times it seemed like you were in a battle, whether or not it was Michael or Colin or Charlie or Bruce or Jonathan. You were always around someone and always in a battle, it seemed like. And I would, at least if I'm guessing, if I'm in your position, mentally that makes this race a little bit trickier, because I never sort of get the chance to relax a little bit. Did it feel that way to you, or did you find some sort of zen state within that little bubble to just start clicking off lap times and find a rhythm?
Everybody around me were consistent tonight, so it made it so much easier for me to keep the pace and race nose to tail. It is really tricky because of the wide corner entry and narrow in through the apex. So I didn't I didn't make too many daring moves, which I probably should have at sometimes. But my focus was always keeping a consistent race, keeping it clean, and keeping to my strategy. And I think it worked out this time.
And as always, we'll give you the chance to send you your thank yous, your shout outs, and let everyone know who makes it happen for you and this number 32.
Absolutely, thank you. I'd like to thank everybody in the PCA Sim Racing series. I've made a lot of friends here, and it's been a blast being in season 2 and season 3 so far. And also thanks to the steering committee, they've done a fabulous job, and I have a lot of appreciation for all the guys there. And to my buddies at Classic Car Club and all my other buddies at the Northeast Drivers Club, among many other sponsor friends that I was able to that allowed me to put their stickers on my car, and I'm happy to race with everybody.
Well, Dewey, congratulations on being tonight's Air Rannigan at Circuit of the Americas. Unfortunately, we've got no sort of rubber latex ball cap wig to give you. I'm sure you probably have the muscles on your own, but we can give you congratulations. Remember one of the PCA and at Podium Esports, and say that we look forward to seeing you 1 week from tonight in Watkins Glen.
Wonderful. Thank you, guys.
Dewey Kang, Mr. Clean tonight, Air Rannigan, as it translates to German. And that leaves us one more person to talk to.